Testing, testing, testing. This is a test. All right, welcome. That was The Cult with Sweet Soul Sister. And I want to welcome you guys back. And I'm glad that so many of you joined early and unfortunately, actually on time. You guys joined on time, and I was the one who screwed up because my car was iced down. So we have the Ilhan Omar situation. I wrote this for the Hard News Network. Please check them out. They are Hard Bastard on YouTube, also Hard News Network on Twitter, and Hard_Bastard on Twitter. But you can find me. This is Bold Like a Leopard, of course. You can also find me on Gab. That's at Starscream85, as well as mine's at Chef Leopard. And all of that information is in the description. Please subscribe and like before we go any further. So let's get to this topic, which has been burning the airwaves over the past week. I know a lot of people out there have very strong opinions on Ilhan Omar, but the fact is that this isn't about one person. Okay, so let me see here. Jonathan Mark asked me in the description, in the chat, whether I'm going to defend Ilhan Omar. I'm not really defending anybody here. I'm trying to explain really what is the context around these types of controversies. I'm not pretending to give people guidance on how to feel about one person or another. I personally don't like her. What are you going to... I can't be forced into a position on something somebody says based squarely on my opinion of them. Okay, now once in a while I feel somebody's so disingenuous that I can't really defend anything that they do, but that's not really the issue at the moment. So what I went through in this article is really, if you want to talk about Ilhan Omar, people are behaving as if she's the first explicitly critical person to go out against the Israeli government within Congress, or against AIPAC if you want to narrow it down and talk more specifically about what they call the Israel lobby. But the fact is that there were some other people that have been involved in that type of work. And in fact, it used to be more the Republican side had some people that were interested in it. And the most important one, I would say, is Paul Finley. And I keep his his videos up on my article here. So I'm not somebody who's going to conceal the views and beliefs of people that I disagree with because I'm writing a piece where I kind of clash with some of their points. I think that open discourse is really what we need in order to actually have serious debate on any topic here in the U.S. Okay, unfortunately, sometimes people say things that aren't exactly flattering towards one person or another. But this Paul Finley, I remember reading his book back when I was a kid, and I was like, yeah, this seems a bit unfair. What he says about the Israel lobby, they're not really working to the best interests of the country. That was what I thought at the time, as somebody who was in high school, coming from a family. Jewish family, in fact, Israeli family. Later, I figured out that you have to look at it from a couple different angles. Okay, so the people that are criticizing AIPAC, they feel that it has undue influence on the American government. Okay, but if you go and you look at the world as a whole, AIPAC really is only influencing the U.S. government. What about the other governments around the world that define policy in the Middle East? You kind of have to ask who influences them, and why is it that they pass a lot of resolutions at the United Nations that are condemnatory towards Israel. That's an imbalance as well. So so those people who object to undue AIPAC influence in the U.S., they have to either go in depth and analyze why it is that AIPAC may be, why is it that AIPAC may be focusing on the U.S., whereas, around the world, there is no there is no country that would be facilitating any relationship with AIPAC. If you go to a country such as Russia, they don't have the same political structure as we do. Okay, I'm not judging Russia. This isn't a Russiagate episode anyway. But when Israel wants to have certain things that they sort out with Russia, they have to send a diplomat over. They have to go through, the normal channels of government, because their relationship with Russia is different from their relationship with us. So Paul Finley, I'll play this clip in a second, but people are saying, here's Jonathan says, remember that Finley raised more money and more PAC money than his opponent when he was voted out. So you do have the issue where a lot of people, they focus on AIPAC as if it's the only lobbying group. They behave as if it's the only lobbying group that matters. But the fact of the matter is that there are other lobbying groups that are much more powerful than AIPAC. For example, you have lobbying groups for tobacco and banking and for various industries. AIPAC, by the way, is also, they're very in favor of the defense industry. That's why I'm critical of them. Okay, I'm more critical of them for their relationship with the defense industry as opposed to their relationship with Israel necessarily. Gerke says it was a trip to hear her hammer Abrams' ball up into his chest. I did watch that, and as much as I dislike Ilhan Omar, I kind of didn't really agree at all with any of these people who were saying, well, she's criticizing an American hero. I don't feel Elliot Abrams is an American hero. Whether he's a war criminal, that's you can't just accuse somebody of being a war criminal. If I believe that he was a go-between with the Contras and a number of other groups in Latin America. So you can't smear somebody as a war criminal when you can't establish that their role was to actually carry out the war crimes. Now, some people might think, well, you're being legalistic about it. Well, it's a crime. You have to be legalistic about crimes. Otherwise, people, this entire channel, for those of you that don't watch it, Larry's watched my channel for a long time. But the fact of the matter is that for every crime, it doesn't matter what it is, you do have to have the presumption of innocence. And some people, they want to go, people do it all the time. I probably do it, but they want to jump to conclusions as to people's guilt or innocence. And in Abrams' case, he has probably complicity in a number of those issues in Latin America, but I wouldn't call it a war crime because he didn't he didn't actually give any orders. All he did was he was a go-between and kind of a liaison between the U.S. and some of these groups in Latin America. So, I'll get back to some of your comments later. I'll kind of put you guys in the background, but here's the Paul Finley video from the Center for the National Interest.
I don't believe my neighbors here in Jacksonville, my hometown since birth, have any idea how much trouble they are in, all of us in America are in.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
To my mind, we're in a period of crisis.
I mean, the big...
So you have to notice, these are the captions. I don't know if you guys can see the captions because this is a little smaller. This is the former U.S. ambassador to Qatar. So do you think he would have a sympathetic relationship to Israel? Probably not. And I think this video was filmed in the early 2000s. So the Emirate of Qatar has, for a while, just had an adversarial relationship with Israel. Now, you can agree with that. You can agree with their viewpoint, but you can't claim, well, Israel is exercising undue influence on the U.S. Well, why are these State Department people who are unelected people voicing their objection to U.S. foreign policy? Well, these people, now that they're out of government, they're free to express what they want. But let's not behave as if they don't have an agenda either. When we talk about lobbies and diplomatic issues, never, ever, 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 ever believe somebody is being altruistic. Just because I believe that Russia is not a threat to the U.S. in Syria does not believe I agree with the government of Russia, because I don't believe Russia is doing it in order, out of the goodness of their heart. I think the people that watch this show, the people that know the stuff that I've written, they know that I'm a realist, and it's not about being right or wrong. It's about really trying to read the situation for what it is as best as you can.
A period of crisis.
I mean, the big question in the U.S. today is, why do they hate us? Well, that's a damn good question to be asking.
It's an interesting question, because when I first went to the Mideast in 1951, we were worshipped. We were looked at as the country of the only non-imperial great power.
Nobody hates the Americans. People certainly resent American policy.
We're in a deep hole because we're so heavily biased in favor of Israel, and the whole world knows it, and they're astounded by it. They can't comprehend why America, with its great cherished traditions, would close its eyes to the dreadful punishment that we have enabled Israel to inflict on virtually defenseless people.
We saw that what the Israelis had done was lock the doors of several classrooms that were on the second story and then throwing tear gas canisters in so that the kids panicked, and when they finally got out, jumped over the balcony there and landed on an asphalt area below, breaking many legs.
Anybody who's lived any amount of time in the Middle East begins to see the other side of it, I think.
I was arrested 9 times, so I have been repeatedly arrested and harassed. The first time I was arrested, I was 15 years old. The norm was physical torture. I mean, you get physically tortured until you faint, and then they will splash water in your face and start again. And that Israel calls moderate physical pressure.
All right, so physical torture, you have to take into account that nowadays in the Palestinian Authority and in all these Arab countries, they all what do they use on their detainees? they're not like tickling them with a feather or something. They're not like making them watch, like the later scary movie sequels or something that's torture. They're employing use of physical torture as well. That's the way. The U.S. with our Constitution is one of the most unique countries in terms of actually trying to write out that people are that we have a right to not be subjected to cruel and unusual punishment, right? Isn't that I believe it's the Sixth Amendment. So, and also there's the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination or anything. Now, the fact is that we don't really enforce it in certain cases, right? So I'm not trying to pretend that the U.S. doesn't do it, but the fact that these people are saying, well, physical torture, people are being subjected to it overseas, and it happens to be the Israelis that are doing it. Well, using physical torture is actually the norm in the Middle East. Why do you think, for example, that you have countries like Turkey that are basically, they don't want to be so much in the U.S., a satellite of the U.S. foreign policy, because they tend to now employ these torture techniques on people that we don't necessarily want them to. But when they did it against people we hated, I mean, we were completely fine with it. This is the reality of. I'm here as somebody who is saying that this morality play that people are subjecting this whole conversation to, nobody has any clean hands here. We don't seem to hammer folks for war crimes per se outside of tribunals like Tokyo and Nuremberg. More modernly, there's the ICC, but we don't do ICC. So I think perjury was as close as we get. Look, Larry. So, the fact is that Milosevic was put up for trial at the ICC, but Milosevic's opponents never got much attention. The Croats also were tried at the ICC. But nobody paid attention to that. It's like, people want to talk about war crimes as if you can have like a completely legal war, as if it's like a game of dodgeball or something. But I've never heard of a war like that. Have you guys? I mean, if you look back at the history, Larry's been in the military. I think he might have said he was a Vietnam era veteran. Vietnam War, not exactly clean record on human rights. There was also what was it, the invasion of Panama, which was technically not even a war. I think they considered it like some sort of police action or something. So how many? And this is just the U.S. I mean, think of all the other countries that have these wars all around the world. The Congo has been at war since the 60s. and these people aren't going to go on trial anytime soon. It's really, I mean, if you think about it that way, the world really is lawless, and there are no limits to human depravity. So I don't know. You guys want to hear the rest of this? I'm just going to play it out. Hopefully, if you guys want to object to hearing the rest of this, just say it in the chat.
To me, it didn't look as moderate.
I think if Americans decided they want to support Israel, they want a congressman who supports Israel. I mean, obviously.
Okay, the person that they're citing, she works for the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs, but that's the newsletter of that organization, the CNI.
It's a free country.
Council on
and they're
National
perfectly free
Interest.
to decide that, but they don't know that that's what they're supporting, and I think that's the problem.
Israel and the lobby, or Israel through the lobby.
So if you see a pattern here, it says U.S. Foreign Service Officer. Sorry, I can't let this play out because there's so many things to explain on the way. But all these people are former foreign U.S. State Department officials.
Are really running our policies.
In fact, it's worse now than it's ever been before. We have a White House that's totally dominated by Israelis.
It's sad that the Americans who are so concentrated on helping Israel, they don't give a hoot, so far as I'm concerned, about whether it hurts the United States or not.
Israel and her present policies and the Sharon policies are undermining American security. They're undermining American policy.
I spoke with the head military lawyer for the IDF, Joel Zinger, and I said, you know, I spent 2 weeks here, and it's clear you people are inflicting Nuremberg crimes on the Palestinians. Exactly what the Nazis did to the Jews. What's your explanation? He said, military necessity. Notice, he didn't disagree with me. I said, that argument was rejected at Nuremberg when the lawyers for the Nazis made it. So then he said, well, we have public relations people in the United States, and they handle these matters for us.
Arabs and Muslims have to be made to look bad in America, and America has to be made to look bad to them.
It is not too difficult to understand that bad things are going to happen to Israel, which I do not wish to see. Bad things are going to happen to the Palestinians. I don't want to see that either. And bad things are going to happen to the Americans, and that, above all, is what I wish to avoid seeing.
So I was going to say, I was just typing in the chat, but this isn't the whole show, but you guys can put other topics once we finish with the Ilhan Omar one. So this is the Council for the National Interest. Now, they're not very strong, but they've been around since 1989. And the fact is that they are an organization that has been at work for years to kind of counteract AIPAC. They've been very much for what they would call balancing the foreign policy perspective of the U.S. and their leader was Findley, as well as former Representative Pete McCloskey of California. And they had a number of other people, such as Senator James Abu Rezk, who I think was a Lebanese Christian, lived in South Dakota. So as they are still active, they're just not very successful. And the fact is that one of its board members was Abdul Rahman Al-Amoudi, who was convicted of financing a plot to kill the president of, one of the princes of Saudi Arabia. So, look, like I said, there's no altruists in this game. Everybody has an interest in something. Okay, welcome back, Augusto. Thanks for coming back, man. The other person is Cynthia McKinney. I don't know. This video might be long. I don't remember which one I used, but she claimed that that members of Congress were forced to sign a loyalty oath to Israel. Now, we'll hear what she says, and then I'll kind of I'll respond. So let's go.
not allowed to do that because I did not toe the line on U.S. policy for Israel.
What line is that they wanted? Were you told directly that you had to toe a line, or explain that to me?
Well, every candidate for Congress at that time had a pledge. They were given a pledge to sign. And I was new on the scene. And so the pledge had Jerusalem as the capital city, the military superiority of Israel.
American Congress people have to sign this pledge.
Yes, you sign the pledge. If you don't sign the pledge, you don't get money. So, for example, it was almost like water torture for me. My parents observed this. I would get a call, and the person on the other end of the phone would say, I want to do a fundraiser for you. And then we would get into the planning. I would get really excited because, of course, you have to have money in order to run a campaign. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the planning, they would say, did you sign the pledge? And then I would say, no, I didn't sign the pledge. And then my fundraiser would go kaput.
So, I just want to get into this pledge a little bit more. So this is basically something that is mandatory, that every congressperson has to sign, saying that, Jerusalem, you said, is the capital of Israel, and what else?
You make a commitment that you will vote to support the military superiority of Israel, that the economic assistance that Israel wants, that you would vote to provide that.
This isn't a question for the Congress people serving, that they are representing, or they're supposed to be representing, the people of the United States, not a foreign country, and yet they have to pledge allegiance to a foreign state.
That's what
no one questions this.
That's what I was asked to do. And I made it public. This probably nobody had said anything about it, but I made it public, and then, the excuse was, well, those were just overzealous advocates for Israel. So then the tactic changed, and but this is what is done for 535 members of the United States Congress. 100 senators, 435 members of the House of Representatives have to now write a paragraph, which basically says the same thing. So it's not a pledge, but it's a paragraph, and you post it, and, there are these forums you have to go to at the synagogues or whatever. And then, if you don't perform appropriately, then you don't get money to run your campaign. The problem is that it requires an awful lot of money to run a campaign. And whether it's a woman's organization, an environmental organization, people can read about this on the internet if they're interested. If you go to thomas.loc.gov, that is the official United States Congress website. And if you put in the name Gus Savage, because Gus Savage was a black member of Congress who was targeted by the pro-Israel lobby. And he had the foresight to use his position as an incumbent in the House of Representatives to put his experience on the congressional record. For the entire existence of the United States Congress now, people will be able to access his experience. And what he wrote was that it was the Garden Club of New Jersey that gave his opponent $5,000. But it wasn't really the Garden Club of New Jersey. It was the activists who were associated with AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee.
Wow. Unbelievable. But we're almost out of time. So I just want to get into a little bit of your personal experience now and what you're planning.
All right. So a lot to unpack there. Now, the woman that she was talking to is named Marzieh Hashemi, and she happens to be, she was actually arrested recently in the U.S. By the, I think she was at the behest of the State Department arrested. It's from The Guardian. And she's a She's a convert to Islam who works for Press TV, which is the Iranian official English language news organization. But okay, so let's talk about this. Okay, I think some of Augusto's probably gonna really hate her, but it doesn't matter because I'm not here to defend her. But she was claiming recently when she was arrested that she was denied halal food and had her hijab removed. But it arises within this article in the Guardian that she had her hijab removed when she was put in for having her mugshot taken. Okay, so that's a thing. Yeah, I mean, what do you want? So you want to take you've been arrested for something. If they're going to take your mugshot, so technically, if you put on a different hijab, you could just look totally different in some ways. It doesn't make any sense. That's really why I think that this is kind of a bullshit story. Now, she is a U.S. citizen. She was born in New Orleans. She converted to Shia Islam, so that legally she's not entitled to any fewer rights than you or me. But I still happen to think that it's kind of stupid to fucking I'm watching this debate between Pinochet and Larry with the emojis, but in any case, why would you think that because you've been arrested, you have the right to take your mugshot with something on that you shouldn't? I have a head covering. I take it off when I get my license taken. People there's actually that joke where these atheists they claim that they're part of the cult of the flying spaghetti monster, and they wear like a pasta strainer on their heads. It's kind of it's a funny gag. I don't really agree with them doing it, but I'm not gonna lie and say that it's not kind of funny to hear them talk about it. So it says she also said she barely ate for the first 3 days, save for an apple given to her by a corrections officer while her request to be provided with halal food was processed. Authorities have not released an explanation for Hashemi's detention, but it appears related to her primary residency being in Iran. U.S. law allows the government to arrest and hold material witnesses if a judge agrees with prosecutors that the individual has information that is. So this is going to be some sort of weird shit. And the fact is that it was just recently released that a U.S. intelligence officer named Monica Witt, or Witt, whatever her name was, she converted to Islam and then she defected to Iran recently. She's an Air Force officer. And this was just recently published here, so I'll put this in the chat because it's not in the description. But the idea that somebody can now look this show, you guys know I don't jump to conclusions, but I think it's fair to criticize somebody like Cynthia McKinney. She's talking about this loyalty oath, okay? But the fact is that she's on a TV show in Iran, which is not exactly known for its sympathy towards anything American. Now, I'm not judging them for, obviously the U.S. had a bad relationship with Iran because they supported the Shah. And there was the coup in the 50s that everybody talks about. Okay. That doesn't explain why you're over there today with their brutal government right now, basically sustaining everything that they're doing, appearing on their TV show, which is what she does. I have no issue with, that's Katerina Witt, Jonathan. That's not Monica Witt. What do you think? I don't know that? She was East German. By the way, she was a spy. In any case, so the thing is, what's the issue here, okay? She's basically describing the fact that she calls it a loyalty oath. What it means is, and she even admitted it the entire time, you want lobbying money, you want PAC money from an organization. In fact, it's not directly from AIPAC. It would be through people that AIPAC has probably on their subscriber list, and those people can decide whether or not to bundle money and send to a candidate. So if you're not going to sign something that says you agree with a certain position that a lobbying group fronts to you, they're not going to try to recruit money for you. Now, if you disagreed with them and you disagreed with the substance of the pledge, which you have every right to because you're elected as a official to Congress, because you're a citizen of this country, just like me or anybody else in the chat, you have every right to do it. But why would you think that they would organize a fundraiser for you if you didn't sign a loyalty oath, or what it really is a pledge that you're going to support this agenda? You can pledge to support a different agenda from a different group and get money from them, and that's the way it is. I'm not trying to, justify this matter. I don't think it's the right way to do politics. But anybody that thinks that by not signing a pledge for AIPAC, it basically means that you've refused to take a loyalty oath, it's an extrapolation. It's an exaggeration of what's going on there. AIPAC is an organization that does create, they create a lobbying atmosphere. I don't like what AIPAC does. I don't like the fact that they have these conferences where they basically have these people come on stage and, basically give their friggin', it's like a talent show to see how much they can, shill. It's true. And I'm not going to go and support that because I don't think it doesn't stand for the way I think that politics should be done. I served in the IDF, and I think what AIPAC does is not really going to make, in the long term, Israel's relationship with the U.S. very productive. Eventually, you're going to have, a lot of voters are just going to reject that type of politics. They're going to basically, and they already are, they're going to see this as destructive. You're going to see that soon. I have a video from Red Elephants. Some of you might like his show. He's okay with some things, but now Mark says, I am a member of AIPAC and I donate through bundling money, but AIPAC does not tell us who to give to. Look, John, if you want to come on sometime and explain how it works, you're welcome to. If somebody who's an opponent of AIPAC wants to come on, that's also welcome. But I personally don't think that this display that they do with their conference and everything, when you see these politicians go up there and they give this really ridiculous presentation. Lindsey Graham is the worst when he does it. It doesn't speak to this notion that American government is not influenced by people who are into this culture of quid pro quo. When you bundle money and you give it to somebody, there is a quid pro quo there. I don't care what the motive is. I really am, I'm not here to judge any of you guys out there. I'm sure Larry might donate to some people. I'm sure the other Larry does. And Jonathan admitted that he does. And Pinochet, I don't know. I don't think he donates money to them. But, people have a right to use their dollars as they see fit. But when you have conferences that are entirely dedicated towards attracting that, people kind of look on it as some sort of bizarre dog and pony show. And they have the right to it. It looks ridiculous. If you don't think it looks ridiculous, you have to look at it from the perspective of somebody who's never been to one. And a lot of those people probably, they can't believe this is going on. So I do go into this, and I hate it that Jonathan Mark says, I love Lindsey Graham. That you might be the first viewer that we have that likes Lindsey Graham, but that's okay, man. I personally don't like him. Geislinger says, I have never donated the max amount. Is the max amount like $2,500 for those of you in the audience? The hypothesis. So I go into this whole issue of motives. Okay, people are talking about Omar being anti-Semitic. People were talking about, sorry for the cough for those of you that knew, but it's not going away. Cynthia McKinney was accused of being anti-Semitic. Paul Findlay and Pete McCloskey were being anti-Semitic. Were being accused of being anti-Semitic. The whole issue of whether you hate somebody or not is it's almost as if that's too much of a focus. Okay, you're allowed to be elected in the U.S. even if you're a prejudicial person. We used to have people who were senators, like for example, I believe Strom Thurmond, Jesse Helms was. I was old enough to. I'm old enough to remember Jesse Helms getting reelected. Jesse Helms was like a wild beast of a man. He used to say like crazy stuff all the time about black people. And he got elected because the people of North Carolina loved themselves some Jesse Helms. And that's their, I don't like, for example, who's Ilhan Omar. I don't like her. I don't live in Minnesota. So the fact that she's like racist towards one group or another is immaterial to the fact that she is representative of that community. Now, some people are raising hackles right now, and you guys probably have noticed this, that there's this crazy infusion of refugees from the Horn of Africa, from Somalia, into her district, and they're kind of skewing the demographics there such that only somebody like her could be elected, and that is worthy of a conversation. Immigration is worthy of a conversation. The fact that she's so open borders is worthy of a conversation. But once you open that conversation, people have a right to ask why there are all these other like politicians that are for open borders, and it happens to be some of them are taking money from bundling groups that are pro-Israel too. So I think that this pro-Israel lobbying activity is not going in the long term to be an effective strategy for people who want to further the interests of Israel. And I actually make the case in this, okay? And you guys can disagree. I don't think Larry Gerke is going to disagree with me. I think we're on the same page with this, but you can he's not on the same page with me on the coughing, but you guys can you guys can voice your opinions here, but I think that the way to create like a beneficial relationship between two countries is through trade. I wish every country that we have a relationship would be like with Japan. Now, Japan, I do know that we still have, I think, naval and air forces in Okinawa and all of that. But if you look at it broadly, we have a fantastic relationship with Japan. I think, am I wrong? And they used to be our worst enemy, right? And it's mostly based on trade. Some of it's based on defense. The majority of it is based on trade. So I think that you guys would agree with me that this whole aid-based relationship, and they have the argument, the AIPAC people, that the aid gets reciprocated back into the U.S. because most of it is used on U.S. U.S. Defense products from companies like Northrop Grumman and whatever. That's all well and good. My question is, why can't the Israelis just buy that straight up? And I think that they can now. I don't think that this dependency on the aid money is necessary anymore. I think the Israelis, if they want to buy that product from the U.S., they can do it straight up. Or, and this is the other thing that I believe that some of these lobbyists are afraid of, that they could just develop some of these weapons independently with some, they have 3 or 4 different major defense companies. They have, what's that one? Elbit. They have Rafael. They have the IMI. They have Israel Aircraft Industries. These things, people are deluded. The anti-Israel people are deluded. They think that by ending foreign aid to Israel, that would automatically shut off the spigot for them to actually maintain their defense. I think the opposite is true. First of all, they could forge, a relationship with some of the other countries around the world. For example, why wouldn't Ukraine trade arms with Israel? Why wouldn't China? Why wouldn't some of these? There's other countries that are involved here. You have Brazil, for example, has a defense industry. The defense industry is ignored throughout the world because a lot of people just don't. How many people use those products? How many people use space age aerospace products? It just doesn't happen. So, I think people are like focusing on the trees instead of the forest here. We really have and it's unfortunate because it's all because of Ilhan Omar, who is focusing on the AIPAC issue. And I know that Mark is saying, John Mark is saying that, they're not really telling you who to vote for. They basically just probably, I mean, I'm assuming they give kind of a report card for things like that. Look, that's true. So AIPAC, for those of you that don't know, is a 501c4 organization. Now they do advocacy and they do their events and everything, but they don't really donate directly to a candidate. What they do is they essentially give kind of the stamp of approval to some of these candidates, and then they receive these monies from interested people. Some of these, I mean, some of these people I don't necessarily like either, but that's the way it is. Gurki says, my son-in-law fought in Somalia. If we stay the F out of these S-holes, we won't import so many of them. Pinochet says, Brazil's defense industry is about to get much larger. Gun ownership just had gotten a boost there. There's small arms industry. That's an interesting point. They do have a small arms industry. For those of you that don't know, they have a number of, pistols and rifles that are produced there. They're not necessarily well known abroad, but it's a fact. So people have to kind of broaden their horizon here. Now, what I was getting at was that AIPAC, they donated a lot of money. Well, they don't donate the money, but the people that are friends of AIPAC would. So, Ilhan Omar was kind of simplifying the entire statement. But the fact of the matter is, so Jonathan Mark, when he started out, he was like, well, I hope you're not going to defend Ilhan Omar. Well, I'm not defending her. I'm not defending anyone here. I'm just trying to say that this conversation about lobbying, if people are complaining about lobbying, they're only complaining about the lobbyists that they don't like. They're not complaining about the lobbyists that like them. So, there's positive points to the Israel-U.S. relationship. Okay, and there's negative points. Now, a lot of people point out the Jonathan Pollard spying debacle. There was also the issue of Larry Franklin, I believe was the guy's name back in, as maybe 20 years ago. There were a number of people that have been caught spying on behalf of Israel against the United States. There are also people, by the way, on the other side that were spying on behalf of the U.S. against Israel. And those of you that, that's a fact. I mean, now, are you going to say that Germany has the right to cut ties with us because Obama was tapping Merkel's phones and stuff like that? That's the way things go. Mark says, AIPAC issues a legislative scorecard rating a member's votes. We know who is pro-Israel. Without it, I do not know whether anyone looks at the scorecard. I know people who look at the scorecard. So, it is what it is. Now, I think Cynthia McKinney is being very, she's being very naive or she's feigning naivety when she says, well, I didn't know that, because I didn't sign this pledge and I didn't vote this way, that they wouldn't donate money for me. I mean, you're a politician and you're a politician's daughter. You're smart enough to know that. After the battle for Okinawa, why should we ever pull bases out of Okinawa? As I recall, we occupied it as late as 1968. I remember when we lowered Old Glory then. It's very interesting. Larry has some great stories from the U.S. Navy. I wonder if the other Larry is from the U.S. Navy. But now, the other issues with the U.S. and Israel is that why were we an ally of them? Or, why were they an ally of the U.S.? Because there was the Cold War guys. So the Israelis were, at an adversarial relationship with the Russians. They didn't want Russia to dominate Israel. Israel had kind of a very socialistic government at the time when they got their independence, but they didn't want really to be dominated by the Soviets, kind of the same way that Yugoslavia and some of these other socialist countries were. So they kind of distanced themselves during the Stalin era, And the Soviets never really let that down. And then they ended up, the Soviets, once there was the Egyptian revolution of the 50s, they started supporting the Arab movements, the Pan-Arab movement, in Syria, in Egypt, in Libya, in Iraq, in Algeria, in a lot of these countries, in southern Yemen. So there's this notion that, well, this is all about arms dealing and whatever. Well, the arms dealing is one part of it. The other part of it is that the Soviets had the other side was on the Soviet side, and I even put through there's sources that are out there. You can believe them or not. That the current president of the Palestinian Authority was a Soviet agent. He was an actual asset of the KGB when he was going to school in Moscow during the 80s. He actually did his doctoral thesis there in, I think it was Patrice Lumumba University. He was claiming that there was I think he said that there was only 800. His thesis was that the casualties of the Holocaust numbered maybe, I think, 800,000 or something. And since then, he's renounced his thesis. Okay, so that's the type of person who leads the Palestinian Authority today, a person who's alleged to have been a KGB asset. Okay, that's based on KGB archives. So you can, I'd like to see a little more independent verification of this, but it is out there. He did go to school there, and he did have he got his degree there. So, I don't know why people necessarily trust their side. Though a lot of these right-wing opponents of Israel, okay, they have their right to object, but the fact is that we're talking about supporting one government against the Soviet Union, which was pretty common at the time. So another issue is that, Cynthia McKinney likes to claim that Israel was behind 9/11. Now, she's never put forward any serious evidence of it, but she did thank Prince Al-Walid bin Talal at the time that, she was asking him, he'd written a letter to Giuliani and signed a $10 million check saying, well, this is in order to go towards defraying the cost of the damage to the Twin Towers. Now, you have to acknowledge that U.S. foreign policy has been, it's been one of the reasons that resulted in 9/11. Now, the fact is that you guys probably know, okay, you can agree with what Al-Walid said, but the fact is that nowadays there seems to be more and more evidence that the Saudi government that he was a part of was complicit in 9/11, okay? Those of you that think that Israel was complicit in 9/11, you could, I don't know what to say to you, but you have to probably acknowledge that the Saudis were too, and she thanked them, okay? So we're not talking about somebody who is an objective observer. She's now working with Press TV and Crescent International, which is also, they support the fatwa against Salman Rushdie. So those are the people in the past that have supported this type of approach to Israel in Congress. And eventually they were voted out of Congress, and they blame AIPAC. But the fact that they can blame AIPAC doesn't explain what they've done since then, which is, basically, you have, who's the other person? Pete McCloskey, for example, went and spoke at a Holocaust denial summit. He was one of the people that supported the CNI. So you guys have to realize that some of these people, their motives go beyond criticizing U.S. foreign policy. Some of them just probably don't really like Jews. This is from Vince James, and he's also a critic of Israel. And he's kind of trying to he's more of these he's one of these people that objects to what he calls anti-white propaganda. And I've seen some of his shows, and they are kind of interesting. And I thought it would be remiss of me not to include this. I don't think we're going to watch the whole thing because it's a little long, but I want you to get a flavor of some of the right-wing opposition to the Israel-U.S. relationship as it is right now.
So there's a lot of media ruckus, a lot of media outrage going on surrounding Ilhan Omar, newly elected Democratic Congresswoman of Minnesota. And of course, it's because of some of her tweets once again. Now, I do not like Ilhan Omar. As a matter of fact, I despise her quite a bit. I do not like the fact that she tweeted in defense of the Hebrew Israelites 5 days after the whole Covington Catholic story was debunked by the alternative media. The mainstream narrative of the Covington Catholic story was debunked by the alternative media. She tweeted in defense of the Hebrew Israelites. This is, of course, an anti-white move. I believe that Ilhan Omar is extremely anti-white male, anti-white Christian male. She's an extreme leftist. I believe all of this, and I do not like that. However, the media outrage this time is a little bit uncalled for. It's a little bit uncalled for because if you're in search of objective truth, if you are in search of objective truth, no matter what that means and no matter who that offends, then this outrage is uncalled for and actually baseless. And I'm going to prove that to you today.
Bugged phones and leaking documents, it's the stuff of a spy novel, but really they're the details of U.S. government spying on its ally Israel for fear that it was waging too much power on Capitol Hill. Waging too much power on Capitol Hill. This is the Senate Intelligence Committee chairwoman,
Just let it catch up. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Meanwhile, I'm gonna try to find the link to the Streamlabs so you guys can tip me if you want, but no pressure.
A lot of when it
or you're gonna have to open this up.
Waging too much power on Capitol Hill. This is the Senate Intelligence Committee chairwoman, a Democrat, says the situation in Iraq is too precarious to pull back. Here on all that, Michael Scheuer, good friend of the show, former Bin Laden.
Yeah, this isn't going too well, is it? I must be trying to suppress free speech on Israel, right? That's probably what you're all saying. Hold on, I'll get this working. I just want to put that tip hotline here. That guy is a Nazi. I am glad the stream stopped. Well, you're about to hear him again. Look, I am a free speech absolutist, and I like to hear people, even people that I object to. So I'm sorry.
Much power on Capitol Hill. This is the Senate Intelligence Committee chairwoman, a Democrat, says the situation in Iraq is too precarious to pull back. Here on all that, Michael Scheuer, good friend of the show, former Bin Laden hunter, former CIA career operative. Michael, it's a pleasure. Welcome back.
Well, if it was a real ally like Canada or Britain or Australia, we would be surprised. But it's a pleasant surprise to me to find out that the FBI is spying on the Israelis. The Israelis are certainly an immensely malign influence in the United States. They steal our technology. They suborn government employees to spy for them and transfer documents. And certainly their influence through U.S. citizen groups like AIPAC on the Congress is politically corrupting.
So this is from Liz Cheney. House Democratic leaders should condemn this anti-Semitism and immediately remove Ilhan Omar from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Now, I don't believe that Democrats will remove her from any committees. We saw the Republicans remove Steve King from committees when the New York Times, the liberal rag, the far-left rag, actually misquoted him. And the New York Times has been involved in CIA.
So I never talked about this. I did try to produce a video, but it didn't come out very well. So, look, guys, the Steve King thing I think kind of was bullshit, if that means anything to you. Because I looked through those quotes, and all he was talking about was culture and being European or something. And it did, I fail to see anything I should give a crap about. I mean, he never defamed anybody. He never said anything like especially, defamatory or derogatory towards anyone. This cowlick is really getting me. Hold on. That's better. Sorry, guys. Well, somebody should have said something. Can't believe it.
We know this from declassified documents. We know this from many different things, and going all the way back to Operation Mockingbird when that was declassified. We know that they're a far left rag. We know that they misquote people all the time. They got the Covington Catholic kid story completely incorrect. They misquoted Steve King. He clarified his statement to the New York Times, and they still took him off of committee. They didn't censure him, but they still took the committees away from him. I don't believe that the Democrats will do that with Ilhan Omar. I don't believe that they'll go that far. They have a lot. They're a little bit tougher than the Republicans when it comes to things like this and protecting their own. We'll see. I may be proven wrong. Actually, by the time you watch this video, they may have already removed her from committees, but we'll see about that. But anyway, let's get back to the tweets and the actual validity of her tweet. So if we go to this one, she says, AIPAC. And she's quoting someone who says, I would love to know who Ilhan, Minnesota, thinks is paying American politicians to be pro-Israel. And she says, AIPAC. Okay, let's leave that aside here. We're going to fact check that. It's all about the Benjamins, baby. And she's quoting someone named Glenn Greenwald, who's from The Intercept. He's a journalist, verified journalist from The Intercept. I do not like Glenn Greenwald. If it comes down to it, he's tweeted many things that were very anti-white Christian male, anti-Christian. He's tweeted many different things that, he's a leftist. But he says GOP leader Kevin McCarthy threatens punishment for Ilhan, Minnesota, and Rashida Tlaib over their criticisms of Israel. It's stunning how much time U.S. political leaders spend defending a foreign nation, even if it means attacking free speech rights of Americans. He is 100% correct here. And once again, we have proof for all of my statements here today. So if we go on, we're going to go on to Batya Ungar, and this is who tweeted.
So I'll let it catch up. Who he's referring to is Batya Ungar Sargon. So I want you guys to realize that sometimes these people who, Batya Ungar Sargon is friggin' she's the editor of The Forward, which is basically one of the most far left anti-Israel Jewish newspapers that there is. They constantly publish stuff by people who are for the BDS movement, and she was objecting that Ilhan Omar was saying something that was anti-Semitic. And this is a problem I see with this whole matter, which is that people who themselves say crap that would normally, Batya Ungar Sargon says crap all the time that would validate exactly what Ilhan Omar is talking about, because Batya Ungar Sargon is full of crap because she's one of these left-wing people. She's progressive, liberal, intersectional, all of that stuff. She's not even genuine left-wing. I have Pac-Man here. Thank you, Larry. He did. I don't know what I did. In any case, the problem I'm seeing here is that people don't want to take a stand against actual lobbying and politics across the board. Okay, if it's across the board, it's across the board. They want to complain about AIPAC. They want to complain about the fracking industry. They want to complain about big pharma. But the fact is, and I go into this, and you can watch Vince's video if you want later. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. But you have lobbyists all the time who are going out, and this doesn't look right. But Ilhan Omar took money. Those of you that remember, from American Bridge 21st Century. And what do we remember American Bridge 21st Century from? Okay, if you're in the chat, Larry knows me, and you have Augusto knows me. Who was American Bridge 21st Century from last year? A story that I worked on. Who was it? And that's a hint. So she took money from all these organizations, including American Bridge PAC, which I already mentioned, American Crystal Sugar, which is a lobbyist for, they're a company that, they're part of the reason why there's a massive algae bloom in Florida, which I think is horrible. And I think that we have to regulate that. I do believe in some of these environmental regulations. The Arab American Institute, okay, which is run by an anti-Israel lobbyist named James Zogby. So if people want, she wants to complain about the Israel lobby, but she can't. She takes money from the anti-Israel lobby. You can't just. You have to be consistent, okay? If you want people to respect you, you should be consistent. Another company that she took money from, $2,700 from Paloma Partners, one of the firms that was, they received $200 million in the AIG bailout in 2009. Is that progressive, guys? Is it? United Healthcare, Okay, is that progressive? Giant Oil, $2,000, and then money from the PACs of other Congress members like Nancy Pelosi, Pete Aguilar, and Catherine Clark and James Clyburn. So I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous. Okay, and this is the end of the topic. By the way, if you guys want to message me offline or something and give some ideas on this, you're free to go. Jonathan Marks saying that guy is literally a Nazi. That is why he is complaining about persecution of white Christians. Look, if I share a source, and you guys can judge for your own. So if you want to, I don't agree with his channel. I'm just showcasing it as an indication of common attitudes nowadays among people who are growing. Their audience is growing, and I've watched that guy's audience grow. Vincent James. If you think that it's going to change things, that we're going to call them Nazis as opposed to, debating the points of what they're talking about, I think you're sorely mistaken. Okay, you guys have to, those people in the audience that are saying this, you guys have to realize that people are forming their opinions based on the observations they're making. This is the entire intent of this article. This is the entire intent of what this whole project is about. It's to talk about the actual details and nuances of what's going on, and then have people form their opinion and decide whether one side is better or the other. At the end of the day, our interests aren't going to align. I don't think Larry Gerke's interests are going to align with Augusto's or with Mark or anything. So, the Vince James, I think he does a channel, and I've seen some of his videos that he talks a lot about the cultural Marxism in school. So, does that make you a Nazi if you talk about that? I don't think so. Now, some of the other things he says about, once in a while he says something I think is inflammatory, but these things happen. Let's see here. Somebody's messaging me offline. The fuck? It's a meme. I'm not gonna share this meme with you. Oh yeah, it's pretty. I'm gonna stay out of this this is not. I'm not gonna try to get a strike here. It's a pretty funny meme though. I'll try to share it offline. There's no way I'm gonna share this right now. I'm a white Christian, bro, and I hate Nazis. Okay, so we're gonna move on, table this discussion, and you guys can comment. There was another person commented on my last stream, on actually the introductory stream to this one. He is a bit harsh on the Jews, but other than that, Vince is a pretty solid guy. Look, I think it's hit or miss with him. I think some of his videos are pretty intelligent, and then some of the other ones are, not so much. I'm sure you guys don't like all of my videos, but here, what's his name? Jeff said in the last video he wanted to talk about Bill Barr being sworn in as Attorney General, and I think I did discuss a bit about that on one of the videos last week, and we're going to elaborate a little on that. So he was confirmed last week by a 54-45 split, with Rand Paul voting against him and two Democrats, what's his name, Roy Moore, and that guy Joe Manchin voting for him. So here's the thing with Bill Barr. I don't expect necessarily this amazing closing of the trap on the Clinton Foundation and all of that under him. It's going to be very touch and go. I think really the question is who's going to be the Deputy Attorney General, because Barr, I believe, he's going to be the kickoff for Rod Rosenstein being kicked out or forced to retire or something. And then once that happens, guys, I think Trump could potentially appoint Matt Whitaker as his Deputy Attorney General. So it's just I think Matt Whitaker would be the more appropriate person for this. I think the reason William Barr would be appropriate for being the new Attorney General is two things. Okay, with Jeff Sessions, there was this ridiculous conversation about whether he had a conflict of interest because he happened to meet Russians during the campaign at one event. There happened to be Russians there, and they saw him and they said hi to him. They also, the ambassador for Russia met him at his Senate office in his capacity as a U.S. senator. So that's really, it's ridiculous. I think it's like Jeff Sessions shouldn't have recused himself. That's really why Jeff Sessions will probably be remembered as possibly the worst pick that Donald Trump ever made to his cabinet, both because of that and because of his drug policy. You also have, of course, that other clown that he picked, the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. That guy was garbage. So that's about it. I don't know why you guys are arguing about Vince James, because I just showed his video. What do you guys want from me? His video is relevant to the topic. What, you want me to show somebody who doesn't care about the topic? Because I'll do that. It's just ridiculous. I mean, I wanted to show. There's also James Alsop. His video is linked to the article. Now, those people, the reason I'm linking them is because they're growing in their audience. Okay, you can like their opinion or don't like their opinion, but their audience is growing, so it doesn't matter. If one woman can, I see the analogy. So that everybody's arguing over whether he will see the remaining part of the Mueller investigation. The Mueller investigation is frankly, it's a complete joke. The fact that all these revelations have been made in the past week with Rod Rosenstein and with there's the Andrew McCabe interview, which was it supposed to be today or tomorrow? Those things are indicators that this whole thing was it had literally no validity. They're keeping this thing on life support. Adam Schiff today, he went on CNN and actually, let me see if I can even find this. Okay, this is how stupid this retard is. Okay. It's a Twitter video, so take a moment. Yeah, here we go. This dumbass. So
this week, the chair, your counterpart in the Senate, the Republican chair of the Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr, said that his committee has found nothing to suggest collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. You said, quote, "That's not our view in the House." But, you know, Burr hasn't exactly been a rabid partisan on this until the last couple of weeks. He's been working very closely with the Democrats. So why do you think he's wrong?
Well, it's not just that I think he's wrong. Mark Warner, the vice chair of the Intel Committee in the Senate, also disagrees with that assessment. But look, you can see evidence in plain sight on the issue of collusion, pretty compelling evidence. Now, there's a difference between seeing evidence of collusion and being able to prove a criminal conspiracy beyond a reasonable doubt. But Chairman Burr must have a different word for it, because when you look, for example, at the emails to set up the meeting in Trump Tower, it was offered to the Trump campaign, to the president's own son, dirt on Hillary Clinton as part of what was described as the Russian government's effort to help Donald Trump in the campaign. And the response from the campaign was, "We would love to have the help." Now, that's an offer of help. That's an acceptance of help. There's an overt act in the Trump Tower in furtherance of that. And, of course, that's not even contemplating the discussions with George Papadopoulos or the information about the efforts that Mike Flynn made to work with the Russian ambassador secretly to undermine sanctions and then lie about that. All of this is evidence of collusion. And you either have to look the other way to say it isn't, or you have to have a different word for it, because it is a corrupt dealing with a foreign adversary during a campaign. But again, it will be up to Mueller to determine whether that amounts to criminal conspiracy.
This week.
So that's the big thing, and now apparently this hashtag Mara Lardass is trending now. Now they're making fun of. First of all, I thought fat shaming was off the record. It was off the table. Let me see. People are still making these Putin jokes, but there's no substance to it. So apparently, it's now acceptable to promote theories about something that Congress has examined in two different committees, the Senate and House committees, and there's no evidence of. So that's where we are today. So, I mean, these photos are funny, but I fail. So the question is it acceptable to be a fat person in America, or is it dependent on what position you have in life? Because if a 72-year-old fat ass can't be president, then I guess we're being both ageist and fat shaming the president. Okay, and are you guys okay with that? Is that the world we want to live in, guys? Come on, it's 2019, guys. So I don't have any more topics. Of course, there's the NBA All-Star game right now, which is meaningless, pretty much like the rest of the NBA. That's about it. If you guys want, let me see. Did anybody tip the? I'm curious if you can tip Streamlabs. Did anybody tip Streamlabs? Just so I know. Let's see here. I'm assuming it doesn't really work, so let me see if there's anybody on Periscope, guys. I'm gonna kind of waste your time here, just because I'm a douche. But when the hammer comes down and McCabe struck Rosenstein et al., hopefully they will put the magnifying glass on Schiff, and hopefully he will. Look, I think something has to happen to Adam Schiff. I just don't know how it happens. Where is my broadcast on? Let me see here. My channel. This is ridiculous. Periscope is like impossible to use. I don't know why people would ever try to use it. It's like Periscope. Come on. Oh wait, here it is. This is like useless. I don't know why people. Okay, yeah. I just don't have anybody. So I'm on Periscope, guys. If you guys want, if you guys want to see my channel, so copy video address. Here we go. So if you guys want to watch on Periscope, here you go. If you ever want to, yeah, this is garbage. Periscope. The hell. Yeah. So I'm on Periscope and StreamMe. So that's about it. No super chat button on YouTube. There is no super chat for this. There's only Streamlabs. The Streamlabs, by the way, is shit. I should have saved that one, but I did put it earlier in the chat. If you want to donate through there, if it even works, because I think you might have to be live streaming in order for it to work. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. But the problem is here's the shitty thing about YouTube and OBS. I can't stream on OBS and use the what's it called, use the restream for the other two ones, for Periscope and what's the other one? Periscope and StreamMe. I can't do that on the Streamlabs OBS. I can only do it on the regular OBS. But that's about it. That's my problem. And Pinochet said, later, bitches. So everybody have a great night. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video. And Gurky is asking why there's no super chat. You can only get super chat if there's 1,000 subscribers. So I suggest you guys create a bunch of fake accounts and give me some subscriptions. But in lieu of that, just share the video and maybe I'll get a few subscriptions. It's been picking up, but I'm not complaining. I'm not at a loss for income at the moment, but if you guys want to help me out, it's much appreciated. The channel. Sorry. I got a fair amount of people today. Nice guys. All of you guys have a great night. So we have Larry Gerke, Larry Geislinger, Pinochet, Jonathan Mark, of course. Nice for you to join in. And of course, there was somebody at the beginning who I can't see. So have a great night, and I'll talk to you guys later.